Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Erasmus Expeditions. We are here tonight with episode 22 of the Help Action series here on the channel, where I bring a guest on and we discuss a particular topic, do a little bit of Q&A, a little bit of interview, kind of get to know them, etc., etc. I don't have a whole lot else to lead in, except, yes, I do. Wash your hands. And if you're supposed to be at home, stay the fuck at home. It's a very simple tenet. Anyways, we'll get through this, I promise. But I am very excited tonight for this episode. Not only do I really enjoy mechanics and the mechanics side of role-playing games and tweaking them and talking about them, I'm very excited because my guest this evening is a very good friend of mine, somebody that I get the chance to play with on a weekly basis, no less, which is fantastic. Ted from Nerdarchy. How are you son of a bitch?
I am doing quite well. It is. I'm going to completely agree with everything you say about following all of whatever it is your local government is telling you should do. Stay inside, wash your hands, social distance. But just because you're supposed to be staying 6 feet away from people, it doesn't mean we shouldn't be connecting and experiencing those interactions. And I feel that while I can't reach out and shake your hand and give you a hug and do whatever I would do if it were a normal situation and see you in public, connecting to people online, through chat, through video chat, through phone calls, whatever it is that you can do, stay connected, because those things are completely essential for your psyche. And when you remove those things, that isolation can wear you down and cause you to go down dark paths that you don't want to go down.
It's very true. Sorry about the dogs in the background. We're social creatures. That's how we're wired. Even those of us who are introverted and don't like to necessarily be out in public all of the time, we have that need deep down inside of us that has to be met on the occasion, or else we start to kind of get out of step. And I mean, what better way to connect with people than through gaming? If it's not something that you've done before, gaming online is awesome. I have managed to play with people from all over the world, all over the United States, all over Canada, but other countries in the world. It's been amazing.
I should have kept a list, but I've actually got quite a large selection. I don't want to push too much Nerdarchy stuff. This is your show. But every month Nerdarchy does a fan game, just kind of a way to give back to the people who have been a part of the Nerdarchy community for a while. And I mean, literally dozens of countries over the last several years that I've gamed with, all over the place. People that it's like, okay, lots of fans who English is like their second, third, fourth language, what have you. And it's like, man, you just make me feel small when you say that kind of stuff, because I couldn't crack a second language through high school and college. So, yeah.
I have a cousin who speaks 7 languages and is working on his 8th. He's like 22, 23. So I feel like a huge underachiever.
I have a D&D character who's got like 13.
A good old 3rd edition.
No, that's in 5th.
That's 5e. Wow.
Yeah,
that's a feat in of itself.
Worked hard to get there. Number of things that contributed to it. But when you play Nerdarchy, or when you are Nerdarchy and you play a nerdy character, you really got to dive into it. So my first long-term character for 5th edition is a knowledge domain cleric. And so therefore he's got lots of languages. He's got all of your intelligence-based skills, and as the knowledge domain implies, he's got the expertise in Arcana and history. So he's a brain that heals.
Fantastic. And now, everyone, if you had no idea, This is why I had Ted on for this particular episode, because I know Ted has a deep love of mechanics, much the same as I do. So one of the questions that I like to always ask up front of my guests is, when and how did you find gaming? How did you get into this weird hobby that we have?
All right, so I'm 40 something years old at this point in time. I've been doing this since I was 13, 14 years old, rolling funny shaped dice, talking in funny voices. D&D specifically was the first role playing game that I really got involved with. I, like yourself, and I hope I'm not outing you, but I was heavily involved in Boy Scouts through my youth, and in fact even into adulthood, and I'm revisiting with my own children. But Scouts is a place where you get exposed to a lot of interesting people, a lot of interesting skills and what have you. And I found that many different Scouts have been exposed to role-playing games, and D&D specifically, and that's where many people picked it up. I don't know if specifically it was there and then I went to other places, or another friend happened to find it at the same amount of time, but I just I can recall gaming on camping trips when we have nothing else to do. I can recall riding my bike over to my friend's house to roll dice when our homework was done. It's one of those things that as a nerd back in the 1990s, late 80s, whatever it was, early 90s. It was one of those things that there was no social media, there was no way for people to band together. You had to find fellow thinkers like yourself and deal with that niche hobby that was very niche back then. There was no, oh my god, D&D is amazing. You had the corny TV show that everybody thought was lame back then, that didn't really highlight rolling dice or what have you. You had you had weird characters that came from the real world into a fantasy world, which isn't exactly what D&D is either. So only minor corollaries. But it was one of those things that you had this sense of accomplishment and building up power and self-esteem and what have you. So anything that helped build yourself up and boost your confidence, it was great for the social outcasts, which I very much was.
Hard same, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's kind of why a lot of people from scouting end up having the chance to play. Because for me personally, like, I just didn't really care about the fact that I was a nerd. Like, it had been made apparent to me at that point, glaringly so, and I was already a Boy Scout, so playing D&D wasn't weird or nerdy to me. Like, I was
So
like, hey, this sounds like fun.
on that, I will say, like, you can be bothered by other people's opinions without the need or the desire for you to want to change yourself. Now, other people's opinions and reactions, interactions with you, can affect your life. And for me, it absolutely did. But not enough that it was like, oh, well, I need to make a change. I was who I was, or I am who I am, and their opinions weren't going to change me. I want to do the things that make me, feel good, the things that I enjoy doing. And if you don't really have if you have a problem with it or you don't find enjoyment in it, oh well, that's your problem, not mine.
Yeah. When I was a teenager, I had a very freeing realization, and that was that I only cared about people's opinion of me if I felt they were my peer. Other than that, I didn't give a shit what you thought about me anymore. And that was entirely liberating as a teenager. I went through my entire high school years with that understanding, luckily, and I think it was huge as far as my development as a person.
I struggled from 6th grade as I was becoming more nerdy until 10th grade, where in those years I was still, I basically I called it like a split screen. I was in some classes with the more intelligent people and some classes with the less intelligent people. Not trying to judge anyone, but typically the less intelligent is where you're going to have the higher percentage of people who are willing to, look down, talk down, and bully others. And therefore, by having exposure there, I was open to more, ridicule, insult. And there were, numerous people that, decided that for several years they were interested in, making my life miserable for whatever reason. Um, Once I got
their
to,
lives were miserable.
again, I try not to judge.
It's usually what it is, man.
Yeah, no, completely. But by 10th grade, I had gotten into, more honors programs. I had gotten separated enough academically that I didn't really interact with those people anymore, minimal things in the hallway or what have you. And life got to be, better. I don't want to say, oh my God, it was bearable. No, it was definitely better. And getting away from, a negative environment is always better for your psyche. And that's kind of what I had to deal with.
That's incredibly true. Yeah. A lot of people talk about how they would love to go back to high school, and I'm like, nah, I'm good.
There's
that age, maybe, but
there's a handful of people that I would like to be able to reconnect with. People that just aren't on social media or what have you. For the most part, I think that people have made choices, and if they've chosen not to remain a part of your life, now it's sometimes best to just let them go and move on. I've, through doing YouTube videos and everything else that I've done because we started Nerdarchy, I've made a lot of really great, friends. We've talked about, the Dawnbringers are basically a family. I'm looking forward to the time when I can be able to meet all of you face to face. I was this close to being able to hang out with Jake for a random Saturday last year, but sadly that opportunity was taken away from us by a bit of car problems. But I have faith that it will happen. I will meet you and M and everybody at some point in time.
Absolutely, you should come to ACON. Oh, look, hey. Oh,
that is something.
My endorsement check in the mail, Tim.
That is something that is on the docket to do at some point in time. I just don't know when.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
And right now, all conventions are kind of up in the air. So, people are like, I don't know. Do I go? Do I not go?
Do I stay or do I go now?
So okay. I'm gonna leave conventions off the conversations for the time being.
Yeah, it's a big question mark right now. Okay, well, kind of rolling back into this, one of the things that I like to come to the talk with is some preloaded questions from people who may follow the channel or just happen to see the post. And I have a few of those, and I think I'm going to go ahead and toss the first one of those out. And this one is from Connor Davies. He asks, sometimes a session goes for hours without having any rules interaction or die rolls. Is this a failure of the system that's being played, i.e. the system can't help you in these certain scenes, such as a debate with an NPC in D&D 5e, or is it just something that we all have to expect from the rules systems, to not be able to have every aspect represented mechanically?
Connor, I think that's a great question, and I feel that's not in any way, shape, or form a flaw of the system. And to me, I think that's a sit back, put your feet up, and enjoy yourself kind of moment. I love role playing. I think that is my favorite pillar of 5th edition, and I feel that if you get characters interacting either with each other or with an NPC, then you have sold exactly what it is that you're looking for. Mechanics are there to aid and support the game when the system calls for it, when it's needed. And I feel that if you get to a point where you can just sit there for hours on end, being in character and loving what's there, either the players are really reacting to what has happened, to what will be happening, or what will happen. They're developing characters, they're developing plot lines. If they're talking amongst each other, you as the DM, you should be listening, you should be making notes, you should be aware of what's being said. Are they giving you information to exploit later? Are they giving you clues for where they want the story to go from their character's perspective? Are they telling you, oh my God, this is a fear of mine that I don't want to explore, again, from a character's perspective. So therefore, it could be something that you need to figure out how you're going to handle the situation respectfully based on character versus player. There is so much there that you need to be able to digest, handle, process, and move forward. In years past, if characters were getting heavily into role playing, this is before Nerdarchy, I would feel, very much in line with what Connor was implying or asking, and like, oh my God, something needs to happen. All they're doing is talking, and I would find a way to put something so that I was in control again. But I feel like that's a misstep. Now, if the players are hemming and hawing and they don't know what to do, and it's the same circle, oh, you make a decision, no, you make a decision, if you get into this rotation that's not going anywhere and the story's not progressing, well, then you can insert mechanics, introduce another NPC, introduce a problem that they need to solve, whatever it is, out of combat, call for aid and change the story, so that they do have something to react to because they are stalled. So like those are things that I look at. Those are things that I've gone into and have had experience with. Nowadays, and if you watch Jeremy and I at the Dawnbringers games, there are many times where we have just sat and talked for most of, if not all of, the session. I know that there have been multiple games where I didn't really roll dice. I think, in a recent session, I dropped a single D20 and that was it. I don't feel mechanics are an absolute necessity of the game. They are a tool. They're there to help, but they are not required.
Yeah, there's been game sessions, both of the Dawnbringers and some of the other ones that I've been a part of where, as the DM, I may not do anything for 90 minutes. That's okay. As long as everybody is getting along as players, then everything's copacetic. I'm cool. I'll just save whatever I had planned until the next session. I'll figure out a way to use it later. But yeah, I think that these systems that we typically play they're merely simulations. So a simulation being perfect enough to kind of cover every aspect of what it is to be a living being, that's just not possible. So they have to kind of choose what areas are going to be highlighted and kind of what is going to be giving the game its feel. So Dungeons and Dragons is very combat heavy, very action oriented. That's the kind of story that you can typically tell in D&D. It's not the only story you can tell with D&D, however, but that's not a failing of the mechanics if it doesn't cover an area that is outside the typical feel of the game. Like you said, the game's just there as training wheels, more or less.
I've described D&D and pretty much any real role-playing game as we're playing make-believe with rules. Visit that inner child and be like, I want to go do something fun. And, that's kind of what's there. So you don't need rules to talk. This is not, your ye old basic Nintendo or Atari video game where you need to select a button to open a door. You can just walk through it. We've evolved, since then. So you don't need rules for talking and discussion unless, there are points of contention. I don't make, when you talk about player versus player, oh, can I make a persuasion check? Well, only if the other player thinks there's a chance that you could succeed and you're not willing to go through the motions. Most of the time, those kinds of things are only versus, player versus the NPC. I don't try to influence the players through the NPC's actions for your interaction skills, unless like you're talking about a very mechanical, I've got the intimidation skill, I've got something that specifically uses that to generate fear. But that goes outside the realm of a typical conversation and goes more into we are in a contested, more of a combat, readying action. You might not be to combat yet, but you're getting there. And then that's something that's specifically tied to a mechanic, not just an interaction. And that is where, that is definitively different than, just talking.
We actually have another question that I came preloaded with that kind of handles a little bit more of a deep discussion on that very fact, but I want to come back to that later.
Sure.
First, I want to bring up the talking point of rules mastery, quote unquote, which is a term that gets thrown around a lot, but it basically just means being highly familiar with the rules of a particular system, the one that you're running. A lot of newer GMs get hung up on their supposed lack of rules mastery. Some even going so far as to decide that they don't know enough of the rules to even run a game. In your opinion, how important is rules mastery towards being a GM?
Not at all. I do not feel that you need anything more than a basic understanding of, essentially like the tiered system of what D&D does. Number one, 90% of your dice rolls are going to be a D20. Understand, 1 is a fail, 20 is a auto success for most things, not skill checks. And then you have the concept of the tiers of play. You have a concept of what the challenge rating system is for monsters, and that beyond that, you can have someone who is a player at the game who will be your DM's helper. Oh, I have a question on this. How is that handled? And you turn to the more experienced player to say, do you know this? If not, we look it up. But before you get to the look it up, how important is that? Can the DM make a ruling right then and there of how that's going to be handled in this situation versus a future situation? I can pull out, the 5th edition player's handbook, turn to a random page, and, somebody can ask me a question. There's no guarantee I'm going to know it. I've been DMing through numerous editions of this game. I've DM'd, a variety of other gaming systems. Every once in a while, I'll say the wrong terminology. I'll use, 3rd edition saving throws. Oh yeah, make a will save, or make a reflex save. It's in my brain. It's the same thing in my mind. But if you didn't happen to play those editions, you don't know what I'm talking about. But it's there. But that doesn't change the aspect of me knowing what the actual ruling is. I know enough about this game that I make up my own stuff all the time. Typically through my last 2 campaigns, more than half of the monsters that I've used have been my own creations. That is my forte. But when you game with veterans, people who are, reading the same materials that you are, and possibly know the lore better than you can't surprise them. And for me, that's something that I love to do. I want to make you say, holy crap, what the hell is this? So whether I get into a description or whether I get into something that's a wholly new mechanic, people are, thrown for a loop, and I feel like I've succeeded. Not won, I've succeeded in my mission as a GM. But do I expect everyone to have the same kind of understanding as what I do? No. Take your time. Let me help you. A few years ago, I joined a game where the newest member to D&D was the DM. It happened to be her first game. Thought she did a fantastic job. When I made my character, I didn't realize that she had never run before. And I happened to come in with a combo mechanic that I stumbled across and said, oh my God, this is amazing. I have to play this character. And for those of you who happen to, have been listening to the Nerdarchy channel for a while, every so often you'll hear me talk about my Eyes character. This was the character that by the time he was done had a passive perception of 30. The DM just basically said, I'm not using traps. I'm not using things that are stealth. I'm just going to throw it out because Eyes is going to see it. When she said that a couple of times, I'm like, look, do you want me to change characters? Do you want me to modify? And she's like, no, I'm good. She was confident enough to be able to say, look, I'm gaming with veterans. This is the kind of stuff that, I'm going to have to deal with. It's not a problem. I'm just not going to do these things. And we've talked about on the channel of, well, even if somebody happens to come up with this killer combo, how else can we modify? What can we do to power down said super character and still allow the DM to do the kind of things that they want? So those are things that when we come up with these concepts of, all right, here's this great idea, how do we look at it from the DM side to combat that? So I feel, Bill, I'm really diverging on this question. I apologize, but I'm quite the rambler. But no, you do not need to have mastery of the rules to run. Get a helper if you feel the need it. If there's a point of contention, make a snap ruling now. You are the DM. This is your game, your rules. And even if it's got a rule printed in the book and you don't like it, you are allowed to change it. It says so in the DMG. So therefore, make your ruling. Try to be fair. Try to be fun. And keep the story and the adventure going. Don't get caught up on a rules call. Don't get into these massive arguments that end games, end friendships, and end your role as a dungeon master because you don't want to deal with it anymore.
Been a part of a few of those before. Usually just sitting at the table watching it all go down. Wishing
I've had somebody rage quit from my game before.
Oh yeah. I heard a story about some guy that drew a gun at a game once.
I've never seen a gun. I have seen a headlock. I have seen a threat of physical violence. Someone was like, look, if you ever do that again, I will kill you. And they were pretty serious about it, I think. So
have we mentioned that this game focuses around getting social misfits together in a room and then pretending to be violent about things?
Well, the point of contention, and I'll diverge the story for just a moment. In our world back then, the god of the oceans was vengeful, and you basically, if you were going to go onto the water, which means you're going to go onto a ship which is on the water, you have to basically give a nod to the god of the oceans, Maltratus, just as a, hey, look, please don't kill me. And the one PC had a boat. He was a bard. He was a ship captain. I think bard ship captain is kind of familiar right now. But the name of his boat was the Please Maltratus Don't Sink Us. And one of the players at the game, out of game, very anti-religion, like hardcore, don't want to get involved. And everybody's got their choice. When we enter into a role-playing game, I feel when the gods are present. They are physically able to be manifested and what have you. You can't say, "Oh, I don't believe in the gods. Whatever." Well, the bard basically did a command or whatever. He used magic to force this character to say a prayer to the sea god before coming onto the ship, so that the ship would not get sunk. And he was really pissed. Now, back then, the concept of a session zero was either not known to us or didn't really exist. So this could have been something that we could have dealt with there, and we would have just kind of glossed over or not gone out on the sea. But yeah, this player was very unhappy at the other player for such action.
Yeah, and I can see an argument for both sides of that, honestly.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's just kind of an unfortunate side effect to spending a lot of time with people, especially like you said, if you make it so that the rules matter too much. That tends to incite a lot of arguments. So, as the DM, GM, it's your table. Run it how you want, but you should always be the biggest cheerleader of your players, bar none. Your job is to challenge them and be antagonistic, but even when you're being antagonistic, your eventual goal needs to be their success, their triumph.
I will completely agree with that. In my early days of gaming, specifically with the crew that we referred to as the Saturday Night crew, most of which became the founding members of Nerdarchy, we had a different style of DMing. One of which was Nerdarchist Dave. It was the antagonistic GM that it was really, look, I'm going to put forth challenges, but I'm not on your side. Like, you screw up, you do something, like bad stuff can happen. And, that first campaign that Dave ran was an absolute, crap show where just about everybody died. Ryan lost several characters in that game. I love the game. I actually, one of my favorite characters to this day was that first Dark Dwarven Psionicist. So much so that I actually had a fan who wanted to get into mini making. He actually made that particular character for me. He's over on the shelf right over there. And it was one of those things that's like, wow, this is really, really cool. But he died to, a wizard fight. Somehow the half-orc fighter died from the wizard's familiar, who hit him with the poisonous tail while being invisible. The Minotaur died in a trap earlier in the dungeon. The Drow wizard at 7th level with only 15 hit points, somehow still alive. Drow Psionicist died, I think, from Melf's acid arrow. And back then it was your 0 hit points, you're dead. End of story. No pass go, no death saves. And there was no like, oh man, how do we get these characters back? How do we keep the story going? It's like, no, the Drow opens the spell book and he gets frozen in a block of amber from Sepia Snake Sigil, and the game's over. Yeah. What do we do next, guys? It's like, crap.
Yeah, there was a lot that I did that was not quite that in depth, but very similar. I played a lot of first edition whenever I first started. And first edition definitely seemed to be angled a lot more in that direction. It was a lot more about bust down the door, kill the monsters, get the treasure, level up, and keep going as long as you possibly can. But yeah, it takes all kinds. There's just you have to know your table, I think, is really what it comes down to. You have to know the kind of game that you need to be running for the people that are in your group. So I think that is more important to understand and realize than the rules of the game that you're going to be running.
And you said it before here on Help Actions that, like you really believe in, a session zero. And those are the kind of concepts that you can definitely nail down on that, is like, what specifically are you looking for as a player, as a GM? What kind of game are you looking to run? What pillar of the game do you plan on focusing on? If you've got a GM who hates combat and you've got a player who that's the only pillar he cares about, well, you're probably not in the right game. Like, you might enjoy it, you might have fun, but it's not the game you're looking for. I love the players that I'm currently gaming with. I've been gaming with a lot of them for a while now. The newest, I've been gaming with for a little bit longer than a year, and all of them are fun role players. They all bring a different favorite pillar to the table. I know some care more about combat, but to me, I aim for 1 to 2 combats a night, and that's about it. To me, it's the least important thing. It's there to have the aspect of a challenge and the threat of death to be present, but it's not necessary.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Okay, so let's see what's next here. Let's go with another preloaded question. This one is from Taylor Jeffrey. What is the best sub or mini system that you've made or borrowed from another system to add to your game?
So another rule set, essentially.
Yeah, like a subsystem. So, if something has a specific crafting mechanic that you like, but it's from a different game system, do you import that kind of stuff into your game? And if so, what's the favorite one that you found?
I've never really ported, a whole rules block through. The closest thing I would say to that is from Dungeon World. They talk about player agency, and I give my players in a number of situations. I'm like, look, how does this handle? And I give complete narrative control to the players, either individually or as a whole. All right, I preface it with, a lead in of, based off of this information, how does this transpire? The game that I ran Friday night, I'm running a game with pre-written material, and it's something that I've got to get the storyline across, but I only get so much time to put it in there. And there was a lot of heavy role playing early on in the game, and I was like, all right, well, here's this whole thing that has to get wrapped up. We have less than a half hour. There is no way for us to really dive in and do all of it and do it justice. So you know what you're looking at, and I was able to describe the scene. What you have as your character goals. What happens? And they happen to take that story and ran with it and did something that, from a story standpoint, really is cool, and it helps dictate what the next thing can be, because we've just had this massive display of power from these characters who are just about 7th level. So a lot of fun things can come from it. So I would say maybe not exactly what you're looking for, but player agency from Dungeon World, I think, is the closest example of that.
Yeah, I think player agency is very, very important. I love handing things over to my players and having them describe the aspects of the town that we're entering, or the particular church that we just walked into, or what have you. Or sometimes, narratively, this combat is really just about showcasing how awesome you guys are. These are all mooks. They're all no-name baddies. So you guys just tell me how you finish them off. How does this escape go? I love doing that. But
I think the greatest thing of player agency, depending upon how much free form you're giving your players, is you can put them in a situation where they're telling you exactly what they want. if you as the DM are kind of stuck as to, oh, I need a random encounter. Well, if you say, all right, guys, what do you see on the road? And like, oh, man, it's a frothing troll holding this, gnarled club that looks like it's got, gems encrusted into it. All right, well, they're bloodthirsty and they're looking for a hard fight. Great. Let's throw this troll. Oh, there's gems encrusted in the club. Oh, is the club magical, or is it just something that they've got to try and pry the gems out? So we go into a combat that leads to, skill usage to extract the gems without them being what have you. Or, as I've seen in my games, we encounter a random merchant and, he's looking for someone to guard his caravan, down the road because his guard ran off with his daughter, whatever. So it inserts the potential for shopping, inserts the chance of role playing, some furthering of, some kind of story. So when you throw agency to the players, it really gives them the capability of mid-game informing the DM what it is that they're looking for.
Yeah, that's a fantastic way of putting that. It's that unspoken language of that you really need to tap into as a GM. That's how you be a good GM, in my opinion, is figuring out how to read those notes that are coming from you, those unspoken guides, and picking up on those psychology, things like that, and being able to change step with what's needed in the moment. Okay, so just to kind of get a general idea, and I think I might have the answer, but do you fudge rolls or rules whenever you're running the game?
Running a game, I have, on rare occasions, I have done it. I try not to do it these days. It's one of those things that the dice are there to randomize the game. And there's nothing to say, oh my God, I put in this super powerful villain and he's getting, rolled over like it's no one's business and it's not a threat at all. That's demoralizing for a DM. And I know I've been there as a DM, I've been there as a player. We've told ridiculous stories on the channel about this super powerful monster and it gets banished or it gets turned to stone or, whatever have you. If you roll openly and you live with whatever the dice say, there's nothing bad. Nothing bad is going to come from it. If your villain gets, rolled like a punk moving through the city by thugs, whatever, it happens. How does that inform your story? You just have to figure that part out. We play a game where, we deal in, 1 to 20s. Sometimes you're going to fail, sometimes you're going to succeed. And if you take away the power of the dice and your players see that, they're not going to have as much respect for the dice. And they're going to think that, oh, well, are the dice rolls meaningless? You're just going to do what you want. And you don't really want that. You want them to feel that the sides are equal. So a lot of times I've got the DM screen so I can keep my notes hidden and my things hidden that I want to be able to put out behind. But we usually use dice trays. We sit them out in front of the DM screen. And when I go to roll, I roll out there. And, when that villain rolls the 4 on their saving throw and he doesn't happen to have legendary resistance, all right, well, it looks like he's getting tripped and shoved into a thing, and I'll just deal with it later.
Yeah, I have a slightly different opinion. Okay. I personally think that fudging is, first of all, never okay to do as a player. I don't ever think that that's okay. We call that cheating, as a matter of fact. But as a GM, I think that it is, in fact, a tool that, personally, I think you need to keep in your utility belt.
All right, so what is your side of it?
So, again, it is not to help you out. It is only to help out the player characters and further the story. For example, You have somebody at your table whose dice are just cold that evening. For whatever reason, their luck just sucks. That person is going to stop having fun in your game. It doesn't matter what you're doing.
Okay.
But maybe that 12 that they finally got on their attack roll didn't technically hit, but it's the first double-digit number they've rolled all night. Fucking give it to them. Like, let them have it, in my opinion. But I don't do the, oh, sorry, he rolled another 20, as one of my monsters. That's horrible.
From that side of it, I have absolutely underpowered monsters when they've been utterly brutal and the players are not rolling well. So I've given less damage than I've actually rolled. I've actually turned attacks into misses because it's possible to just out and out kill characters, especially when you're talking about the low level stuff. Oh my God, the orc crit, the wizard. Oh my, I don't know how, but I rolled 2 1s on those D12s. Thank God. So I have done that, but to me, that isn't, I don't consider that fudging. I consider that, keeping the story alive in favor of the players. So when I do that kind of stuff, I'm on the player side, so I don't consider that fudging. Fudging, I look at as I'm trying to win, and I don't want my monster to die yet. And in the early days of me running, especially in 3rd edition, many of my players did question, how many hit points does this thing have? Because I was always like, all right, one more round. Like mentally thinking, just which one? I would just give it more hit points. Like, all right, it has 149 hit points and they've done 170 points of damage. All right, one more round. Maybe I'll drop a player this round. Maybe I'll drop a player this round. It's like, there's no fun in just prolonging combat to, potentially drop a player. And I was very much known for that. And it wasn't exciting. It wasn't interesting. It didn't really add to the game. And, my players kind of got sick of it. They weren't willing to kick me out of the DM's chair because they wanted to play. But it was definitely something that they had a bone of contention with.
So kind of piggybacking on that answer, and we kind of have touched on this just a little bit, but when do the mechanics need to give away to the better narrative? So as an example, if there's a villain who's been built up as an antagonist against one specific PC, when they're finally getting the chance to face off with them, and that PC kind of beautifully describes this attack, and they hit and they deal significant damage, but technically the bad guy has 10 hit points left. Do you give them the kill, or do you stick hard fast to the numbers? And
so there's a couple different things. There's a couple different things that can be done there. Number one, it depends upon how the rest of the battle has gone. There are sometimes I will give it to them. Most of the time, my players are not describing the attack until you get to that pivotal moment of, to quote the man out there, how do you want to do this? Which I have used at the table and like, no, that's not your line. You pick something else. So until you get to that moment where the DM says, all right, describe what happens, that's when the player goes into this. And there's times that sometimes those descriptions get way crazier than what should be allowed. But you know what? Fine. It's flavor. It's the battle is over. It's fine. There are times where if I'm paying attention to how many hit points the player has, and I know that I want them to win for the narrative, and all right, they're close. They bring the villain down close, and it's now a 50-50 shot. I might just say that's it, and I have done that in the past. I don't do a lot of one-on-one battles, but sometimes it does happen. If you get into, more of an arena type scenario. In my last campaign, it absolutely did happen. One of the players pushed for it, but there it wasn't a villain. It was just kind of more of a throwaway combat that, wasn't a life or death scenario. But when you're talking about a villain and it comes down to the end, and we are talking life or death, yes, I think giving it to the players for the narrative, it makes sense. To me, I feel the story is more important than the mechanics. So I want to see them succeed, and I want them to feel threatened. I want them to feel challenged. We do, as many D&D groups do, we order pizza when we play. I feel when I've got my players stress eating, I'm doing my job as a GM.
It's funny. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where if it makes sense in the moment and you think that it would be better for the story or a cooler moment, then yes, give it to them. Like if that becomes the question that you're wrestling with, then yes, give it to them. Absolutely. Because again, think about how much better it is for the story if the one person who's been had it in for this villain gets the killing blow, as opposed to, oh, you brought him down, and then the ranger from Mage lucky and deals the last 5 points of damage to it. That's very anticlimactic, in my opinion.
To be fair, I've gone and I've kept the villain alive longer than he should have, just to give the correct player the kill. You try
Same
to do
net gain.
You try to do some kind of weakened, half-hearted attempt. For if it's gonna be their turn again, you try to be careful. Not to change the narrative through keeping it alive. But that's when you use a spell on someone who's got the best save. Like, I'm going to use a spell that's going to have a dexterity saving throw, and I'm going to go do it against a rogue who's got evasion. Oh, I admit, poor choice. What the hell? What's wrong with me? An intelligence saving throw for the wizard. Crap. What was I thinking? You do these things that you try not to change the narrative. I will say the problem is in doing this, you have to be careful that this doesn't extend it by too long, because you extend it for player 3, grab a random number, and then player's 3 turn comes up and misses, or doesn't do anything that's going to do damage. He chooses to do something else. Well, then you give it, all right, you gave that player the option. They weren't successful. You have to give it to the next damage, and call it done. Because if you just keep that going, that's building problem on top of problem.
Yeah. Personally, once a combat boils down to hit point attrition, it should be over with, in my opinion. You got to keep it snappy, because otherwise that starts to drag. That's when people's attention starts to wander, in my opinion.
Typically, most combats that I've done in 5th edition have been 3 rounds. My campaign finale for my second long-term 5th edition game actually was unlike any other combat I have seen or heard of. It went 12 rounds. Unbelievable. I could not believe it. It was set up for the players to defeat this wizard and realize that, even though they've already fought that wizard numerous times, this was not the princess that they were looking for. They had to travel further up the tower and find the real one. So the real one completed the ritual, died in so doing, so the game was still over, but there were lasting repercussions on the world, and that is what this new campaign is all about. Because the villain actually brought a meteor into the world and broke it.
I like continuing stories like that. It's always fun whenever that kind of stuff happens at the table, because the world are very lived in kind of feel, a very rich history, because they played through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, moving along. I have another preloaded question here. This one is from Lloyd Collins. He says, yeah, Nico Dawson often says, when you roll the dice, you put yourself in fate's fickle hands. Some players, including himself, try to avoid rolling dice because it will take carefully curated plans and often boil them down to a 50-50 chance, regardless of planning. So, however, we are playing a game that has mechanics. How do you balance rewarding players' cleverness while also using what's in the system and on the character sheet?
So that's a good question. Sometimes, it's like when you're looking at attack rolls, saving throws, there is no two ways about it. There are definitive mechanics for those. We have DCs, we have armor classes. You can't get around that unless you are doing something to apply advantage, disadvantage, or what have you. And then those numbers are still a preset outcome based on those rolls. But when we enter into skill checks, that is where things become a little bit more fluid. If you're looking at a comparable, stealth versus perception, again, two people are rolling off. I can't do anything about that unless, again, situations were set up to change the die rolls. But when it is a static thing, like, oh, I'm going to investigate this room. I have made a poor choice as a DM where the players got to the right room and they needed to find the secret entranceway to get to where the next stage of the game was going to go. And rather than just have them describe what they're doing, what they're interacting with, and move the story on, I fell back into, old habits, and I'm like, make an investigation check. And as soon as those words started leaving my mouth, internally, I was just slapping my brain. I'm like, what are you doing? So right then and there, I not only decided how I was going to change the way I ran, but I came up with this concept, and maybe others have done it. I doubt it's, something that is entirely mine, but the number doesn't necessarily tell you success or failure, but how long it takes to achieve success. If you know there's something in this room and you're going to look until you bloody well damn find it, okay, well then a 9 means you might spend a half hour or an hour trying to find it. And whatever else might be going on beyond, well, that's time that the bad guys have to do whatever. If he ran through and found a secret passage and you come into the room and the door closes, all right, there's a secret passage in here somehow. Well, he now has that half hour, an hour to get further away or to go set up an ambush or whatever have you. So adding time when you still want them to succeed, whether they're doing a search or they're in a library and you're making a knowledge check to look through the books. Well, if it's there and they're going to find it, just add time. But to the concept of avoiding dice rolls, I'm sorry, Lloyd, I have to disagree. I think that they are the built-in balancing factor of this game. When we're just talking and role-playing, great. I don't feel the need to roll dice needlessly. But I am never going to try to do things to avoid dice rolls. If you want to just role-play, great. We can role-play, and I'll be my character, you'll be your character, and we can talk it out and, what have you. But if we enter a situation where the mechanics come to question, then you have to go to the dice. It's what the system says to do.
Yeah, I think in the case of specifically kind of what he's talking about with character creative or player cleverness, I think that's kind of what advantage and disadvantage are for.
If they've got You've got
Bennies
something
and
that's,
whatever else you want to call it.
if you've got someone that's, oh my God, this is really great. If their description sounds awesome and you want to give it to them, give it to them. Like I don't feel like if there isn't a need to roll, don't roll. That's fine. I have no problem with that. If there is a chance of success or failure, roll dice. Like that's how you determine those. In the case of my, dude looking for a secret passage, I didn't mean to say roll an investigation check, but it came out, and therefore I had to come up with this modified system right then and there, real quick, so that the story could continue. And I've used it on a number of times. Not all for, Ted putting his foot in his mouth, saying needing to roll, but at other times when it sounded appropriate. They weren't always story-driven scenarios. It wasn't always a situation where, success or failure was hinged on the plot, and therefore they needed to succeed. But I'm the kind of DM that I'm a player too. I want the story to continue. I want them to succeed. As a GM, it's my job to provide story and to challenge the players so that they feel that that there is significant threat, that what they're doing is not just a cakewalk, because nobody wants to, just fight kobolds at 20th level and be like, man, this is easy. Like, you want to remember those stories of, surviving, by the skin of your teeth. You want those stories of, oh my God, we were going to get our asses kicked by a dragon turtle, and the bard stepped in and be like, you know what? Can we just talk this out and, polish things over? Yeah, those stories are going to be remembered, and that stuff happens.
I enjoy figuring out a spectacular failure because of the die rolls just as much as I do a spectacular success. In the moment, it kind of sucks. But later on, if you just had rolled with it and determined how that impacted what was going on in the rest of the story and dealt with it in character, most of the time, those end up being very memorable moments. There's a lot of stories that my group still tells about, this and that, how my character often described this spectacular, whirling attack, and then I rolled a 1. That stuff happens, and it adds to the game every bit as much as those moments of massive triumph. So try it.
Yeah, I agree. I had a time right before 5th edition came out. We were playing a game of Pathfinder in Dark Sun, and this was only 6 years ago, I guess, and I tend to you role play first, then roll dice, and some people say you should roll dice and then role play, however you want to do it. But I was a Thri-kreen, and there was an elven prisoner, and I was not a good guy. I'll preface this, and I threatened to eat her children, and I rolled an intimidation check as per the GM's request. I rolled like a 6. Now, the way the GM and I handled it was not the best. I was livid because this is where I would have been in a scenario of like, no, there's no need to roll a dice. I'm trying to get information and she's refusing to give it. She's in chains. There's nothing to stop her or stop me from doing any of these despicable acts, and she's refusing to give it. Now, I have evolved as a role player, and I've realized, okay, well, that is what I meant to say, but, I'm a Thri-kreen. My comment isn't always exactly what, it should be. So I've evolved the story of what my Thri-kreen could have really said, but, you have to take those moments and don't get mad at the dice. Don't get mad at your GM when things don't go your way. Use what's there and have that be, a part of the story. Um, and have fun with it. Don't let it, you know, make you flip out of the DM or the character or the dice or what have you. It's all part and parcel of the game. Success and failure are there. If you've got the chance to to succeed or fail, that means both are an option. You can fail.
Yeah, Tim Carney over at Tabletop Terrors made a video recently and had asked a question in the Absolute Tabletop group about when is failure fun about, and I kind of had the same thoughts. Was failure has to be an option, because if it's not, then your successes count for absolutely nothing. That's a hollow victory if you never had the chance of not achieving victory. And it's the same reason why you don't cheat at games, is because if you cheat and you win, so what? Like, that's not worth anything. But if you won on your own merits, then that's worth something.
It's a stolen victory, and it's not as meaningful.
Absolutely. Yep. That's not what this game's about. I think failing forward is important. Failing and stopping, that's never fun. Or continued failing, that's not fun. Especially like if the challenge is set too high and that's the reason why you're failing. Yeah, that's not fun. That's a miscommunication at the table. But having moments of failure is okay, and that's even actually better for you as a gamer and as your character, I promise.
Well, the characters need something to grow, or to grow beyond. Not everybody decides to build these elaborate, backstories. Not everybody has, something set up that, oh, well, this is what my character has as goals and does. I'm someone that I tend to, overthink all of that crap. I do a lot of work, and I say crap lovingly because, it's kind of a joke here at Nerdarchy is, I've written a 5-page backstory for a character that I was playing as a one-shot, and I gave it to the DM, and he's like, what am I going to do with this? It's a one-shot. I don't care about this. I've already got your adventure. So I love, doing all of that stuff. But if you fail in game, if you have things that happen, you have the ability to say, well, how does that change based on whatever my backstory was or wasn't? And what does that mean for the story? If we take, the Dawnbringer game that you and I are in, and we look at, what has recently happened, with Saltmarsh, and, spoilers, hopefully you guys are out there, watching and I'm not ruining anything for you, but there's a lot of people in Saltmarsh don't like the Dawnbringers. We haven't really done what we were supposed to do, and we kind of have this bad rap. And
to be fair, not the Dawnbringers, Saltmarsh. They're giant assholes.
Yes, but the Dawnbringers technically, we, from their perspective, we failed. We did not do what we want. We did not do what we came here for. They claim that the ship was after us, and with a good number of their populace, dead or buried under rubble. I don't know how Talmud feels, but Thorgarn feels that we were an utter failure here. Despite the fact that we did all of this stuff and they were pretty much against us from moment one. It was it was crap. He can't get out of here. He couldn't get out of there fast enough. It's demoralizing for someone who's looking to go and be a shining example of what people should be, and they want nothing to do with them.
Yeah, it certainly added a very interesting element to Thorgarn's personality. It's been a lot of fun to kind of see develop over the last several weeks.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited to see what it'll do to him, and then by proxy to the rest of us. Okay, so I've got a couple more questions. One of which is for those of the few of you in my audience who may not be aware of what exactly Nerdarchy is. Would you how exactly it came to be and what it is that you believe has led to its success as a channel?
All right, so the start of Nerdarchy, really harkens back to, second edition. Way back when as I used already this evening, the Saturday night group. My business partner, Nerdarchist Dave. For those of you who don't happen to know all the intimate details, he dated and married my sister. So many years ago, he walked into my life. Night I happened to be, playing a board game. I think it was chess with my father. Not that my dad is all that great at chess, but it was one of those things. He walked in, long bright red hair, leather jacket, torn jeans, and I instantly, I'm young teenager at this point in time. I've only been playing D&D a small handful of years. Instantly judged his his very heavy metal, don't care about you attitude and why are you dating my sister kind of thing. Several years as the relationship went on, he's like, look, I want to get a D&D group together, this, that, and the other thing. And it became a weekly game and was a weekly game for a very long time, 15, 20 years, something along those lines. And numerous relationships that had, kind of come and go from the different people that were in the group and all the significant others that didn't quite understand, why they were saying, why they couldn't have this weekend night with their significant other, but it was what it was. My, brother-in-law Dave got into, several different multimedia or multi-level marketing concepts, ideas, what have you, and they weren't really working as they usually don't, for the individuals. And he's like, I want to do something different. I want to take some of the knowledge that I've taken and build a platform that we can do. And I want to do something that I really care about. And I wasn't part of the conversation yet, but his brother, the person formerly known as Nerdarchist Ryan, he was actually living closer to where you are now. He was out in New Mexico trying to get his art degree, blooming and becoming a world famous artist, but it hadn't happened for him yet. So he decided he was going to move back to New Jersey. And when he did that, he wanted to, get his brother and do something, and they weren't sure what it was. So they began workshopping and coming up with all of this. So a lot of hours went in, and they researched everything they possibly could with the term nerd and geek. And this is what, wound up coming of it, Nerdarchy. Shortly before, they really got things moving, long before we signed any kind of paperwork officiating it, they brought me in. The multi-level stuff, always say, get a team, get, people of different skill sets, different levels of passion, and, bring them all together, get them working. So there were a handful of others that we consulted, that we thought about. Others passed on the opportunity. Nate the Nerdarch didn't. He was in and out. So the numbers of Nerdarchy have kind of ebbed and flowed over the years. And even the initial concepts, if you go back and look at our earliest videos, we were judging what kind of videos people were interested in based off of what was already out there. And there was not a whole lot of channels talking about gaming. Back in 2014, when we were, really doing this research. The only channel that I was really pointed at was Counter Monkey, Spoonie, and so therefore the first video that I wound up doing was kind of based off of, one of his. But we were debating, are we going to make board games? Are we going to just talk general Nerdarchy stuff? At the time, I was heavily practicing ARMA, Association of Renaissance Martial Arts. So I was studying the German longsword and, fighting every week. I wore padding and protection and that kind of stuff. I only broke a few fingers of other people, none of my own. But as things kind of began evolving, really soon into it, 5th edition dropped. And we wound up becoming known as the 5e guys because we dedicated a whole lot of content directly to 5e because it was brand new. And we found out a lot of people wanted to hear us talk about it. And with our rich gaming history, Nate and Ryan and myself all started with 2nd edition. Dave started with 1st. We had, at that point in time, over 80 years worth of D&D experience to really rely on. So yeah, we became the 5e guys, colloquially, and things kind of just, continued moving along. Yeah, I would say that, we are successful because we've got a successful Kickstarter. We've got the plans for the convention. We've got, it's over there now. It's not really readily on camera, but we did get our silver play button, which I was, super excited about. To celebrate, Dave and I actually got Nerdarchy tattoos. But I think, part of the success is stick-to-itiveness. There have been many channels who have come after us that have blown by us, and we have not really been demoralized by it. It's I don't want to say it's hurtful because it's not. It is a challenge that, all right, we're older white guys, so therefore we don't have the demographic, to completely tie into. We don't have everything that some of these other channels have. So we just, we continue doing. We evolve, we change as we notice different patterns. But ultimately, I think the success is that we just keep going. We keep, we put out our videos as we see fit. The money that we've made, we've put back into the channel to, we went from the 1-camera shoot to a 3-camera shoot. We've gotten better lighting over the years. We've hired different, people to, consult for us. We've paid our writers. We've done, everything. We've sponsored, a handful of other channels when we had our Kickstarter and our, convention, doing all of these things to get the name Nerdarchy out there. It's never going to be a household name. We're never going to have a commercial on television. But it's one of those things that, hopefully, the people within the gaming community will, continue to, help support us and care for us as, as they do for others. It's uplifting to hear the people who have contacted us and say, hey, and I'm not pulling strings here. We've literally been contacted by at least 2 people who have said Nerdarchy has saved their life. They were in a really bad place. They found us, they connected with us, they watched our videos, and they felt camaraderie that was there, and that it was only because of that they didn't go down that dark path that they were considering. Those kinds of things, that's worth more than their weight in gold, to know that this incredibly awesome and supportive niche, this hobby, can do that for others. Jake is always, talking about the hotline with each of his games, always saying, that if you're in a bad place, reach out for support. Reach out to professionals, reach out to friends, reach out to family, reach out to everyone, and get the help that you need. And I'm incredibly happy to know that because we took it upon ourselves to do this, that those people are still gaming to this day. That we've got countless people who have just randomly stumbled upon our video, and we've convinced them to start rolling dice again. To start playing this game. Oh, I haven't played since first edition. I haven't played since second edition. And the number of those emails is off the charts. So, we make an impact, and that more than anything else, I feel, strives us to keep going, to keep doing these things week after week. As we deal with this world crisis right now, we have to look at, well, how does that change? And everybody's saying, don't stop gaming, just game online. There's plenty of ways to do it. Virtual tabletops, there's plenty of free online conferencing tools. Our videos might suffer, but Dave and I are still going to do social distancing. We're actually going to, very similar to what you're seeing here, our videos that we record for the next, however many weeks that we have this, social distancing by law, that's what we're going to do, and that's what our videos are going to look like, because we want to show our support. We can't stop doing videos. Dave and Doug both work the business full time. We need to keep doing videos. That's part and parcel of this. The people who are isolated and not working, they want to see those Nerdarchy videos keep coming out there. If we stop doing them because we can't get together, what is that going to mean? Well, the people who want to see those videos, who use that as a way of de-stressing, as a way of connecting with us, that hurts them as well as hurting the business. And as much as I say that, Nerdarchy is a business. We are trying to turn this into a full-time job for all of us. We've got 2/3 of the way there. We gotta keep moving on. We gotta keep doing the things that we do. But here's where we are. We're a little over 6 years into doing this Nerdarchy thing. I can't say I've loved every minute. There's been a lot of stress. There's been a lot of problems. We've had numerous years where the money we put in was just a loss. Countless hours of time spent researching, planning, filming, doing all of this stuff. It's a challenge. I'm certain Jeremy, how hard it is, and you're a one-man show. Like you have to do this all on your own. We've always done it as a team. That means more of a division of labor, but it's also a division of whatever profits and assets you've got to do. So it's a challenge. Do I foresee a time of Nerdarchy stopping? No. Through world crisis or not, we've set forth that we want this to be our full-time jobs, but beyond that, we want to do more. We want Nerdarchy to be making enough that we can bring in others. I mean, like I said, Nerder Doug, who runs our website and does a handful of other tasks for us. He as of October was a full-time employee. We just talked that he passed 6 months of working full-time for Nerdarchy. That's literally the first step in our. He's not a partner. He is an employee that is working Nerdarchy. We want to have more of that so that we can bring in these people, grow the business, and give back to the community through jobs and getting people working. So the more that we're able to grow this company, the better it is for the community. We'll be able to create more stuff, and that will allow us to be able to hire more people and do more things. And, there are so many things that I can't talk about that are, concepts and ideas and future projects that we would like to do. But we've got all of these high expectations of what, Nerdarchy could be, would be, might be. It's not just a YouTube channel and a website. It's so much more. It's camaraderie, it's friendship, it's, loving this niche as much as I have for, almost 30 years.
I think there's no question at all that you guys have been successful in your endeavor. I think anybody who's ever come across you guys in your channel. I don't think there's any doubt whatsoever. And if they're doubting, then more than likely they just don't know what the hell you guys are doing. But to kind of piggyback on that as well, I have a secondary question. With everything that you mentioned and the opportunities that what you guys have accomplished, all of the opportunities that might have given you through Triumph, what is it that you consider to be your crowning achievement?
Crowning achievement. Well, so there's a couple different levels to look at. Financially, I would say, the wildly successful Kickstarter that we ran, well, wildly for us. There's other in the niche Kickstarters who have done much more so than what we did. But the Kickstarter for Out of the Box Encounters, did really well. It's coming along fantastic. And barring any unforeseen issues with getting printed because of the world crisis right now, we are absolutely going to be able to fulfill on time. Personally, I think the acceptance by other people who have come to know us through one way or another, to me, I think that's bigger. Walking a convention floor and being stopped every 30 feet to some is like, oh my God, this is so freaking annoying. But to me, it's like, hey, here is somebody that has taken time to watch the videos, to connect with us to some degree or another, and then to see me in person, and they want to have a 5-minute conversation. And you see the passion and the caring and the clear knowledge that they know who you are. They call out specific things that you did in a video or said, and that it meant something to them. To be able to impact that many people's lives. As I said earlier, we've brought people back into gaming. We've reinvigorated the passion within individuals. To me, I think that is far more important than any of the financial stuff that we've done. Gaming, as we've talked about, you have this family of people that get together, and sometimes it's an utter, shit show of personalities, and other times, it's people that really care about each other, both in and out of game, and, you all build each other up. Gaming isn't always just show up at the table, roll dice, stay in character the entire time, and you go home. You connect with the people individually. You care about spouses and children and what's going on in their personal lives, because you care about who they are. And to go one step farther and be able to say, well, it's not just, the 4 to 6 people that show up to my table every week, every month, whatever have you. It's the people that are seeing you purely digital, that then get to see you in real life. And, I don't go out a lot. I work from home, so therefore I don't see as many people out in the real world. But, when you're out there and, somebody's like, hey, I know you. And you have to be like, okay, I'm not just going to assume that you know who I am. Who do you think I am? And you get into this thing, and then it winds up becoming, a conversation and a camaraderie, and you connect with somebody, and then they get to walk away feeling like, oh my God. And I hate to say it, but this is the way they feel. Like, I met a celebrity. I don't consider myself that at all. We've joked around that we're Z-list celebrities, because we're YouTube stars, and again, stars, but it's one of those things that you make somebody's day when you get to meet them. So therefore, if you ever run into me in public, by all means, talk to me. I will have a conversation with you. If I'm in a rush, I will have a small conversation with you, but I will still acknowledge, who I am and what have you. But I think to me, that's up there. Yes, it's really awesome to be able to, be running games at D&D in a castle and, be considered a master DM by the people running the events. It's really cool to be able to go to conventions and meet people who are, you know, higher up in the industry, gaming with Satine Phoenix at Gen Con this past year, making myself an idiot in front of Matt Mercer at Gen Con this past year. Those things are, fun, awesome stories. They're fun and interesting to be able to tell. But like those are like me personal moments. They don't really, affect the grander scheme.
Well, I think it's pretty damn cool that I get to play D&D with you. You and Scotty and V, and also obviously M and Jake, and then now also Dan. Like to me, it blows my mind. Like that's not something that I ever would have thought years ago when I started finding YouTube channels like DM Scotty and you guys, that I was like, hey, I know gaming. This is interesting. I could watch this. So yeah, I never thought that I'd be able to play D&D with you guys someday, and it's
you have to remember here. You have to remember here that Dan and we're the outsiders. You guys did this whole thing, and we were brought in later. So, I've watched all the episodes that I wasn't in, and it was one of those things. You guys had this. You had this relationship. You guys were all connected. It was really, really great, and especially when I came up with the exact same concept that was your character. I'm like, this is what I really want to play. And I was like, yeah, we already have a dwarf barbarian Path of the Ancients. And I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Are you freaking kidding me? But then, when we look at where those characters have gone, we're nowhere near the same character. Mechanically, there's some similarities, but it's wildly different characters. Role-playing wise, I'm a mountain dwarf, you're a hill dwarf. I stopped at 5 levels of barbarian and I've gone elsewhere for the last 5. So yeah, very, very different characters. But I was an outsider of like, okay, I have to find my way in here. And, while, yeah, my channel has a higher amount of views, or a higher number of videos or whatever, that to me does not enter into the fact at all. When I come and sit down with this group of players, I was actually watching your help action with M earlier today, and they said that they'd only been gaming like 4 years, or if I'm doing my math correctly, about 4 years, and M's fantastic. When you look at the different voices and the different things that they do, it's incredible. V breaks out into song. Jake is fantastic with voices. That's one of my weaknesses. I don't really do voices. I try a little bit here and there, but I fail more than I succeed, I think, when it comes to that stuff. I don't really consider that like, oh my God, I should just stop or anything. But I'm the outsider here, looking in. I was allowed to join your group, so I don't consider myself in any way, shape, or form, better than anyone else. And I really hope nobody ever tries to hoist that that mantle on me, because I'm just a nerd who's doing this thing, just like everybody else.
Here. I think that's been probably one of the things that I've learned the most. From getting the chance to play with the caliber of player from the community, is that, yeah, y'all are just people.
Indeed.
I can make you guys laugh, so I feel good. And that's really all that I need to do.
You come to roll dice, you come to have fun, you come to build relationships, tell a story together. That's ultimately what it is.
Yep.
Our audiences are gonna share and commingle and what have you, and the that stuff I think is secondary. Let's just come and enjoy the game.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. But it's definitely been something that I've been very, very thankful that Jake let me be a part of. Not just because I get to game with you guys, just because I get to game with you guys. Like I get to know.
I'm right there in that same boat.
You.
I'm thankful to game with you guys, and I'm thankful to game with you guys. Having connected with each of you. I've now hung out with V outside of game. I've hung out with Scotty outside of game. And it's fantastic. I happen to live close enough that those were possibilities. But it's one of those things like, if I were close, I would be doing the same thing with you and M and Jake and Dan. But our game, we are scattered. And that's another thing that gaming online gives you the ability to do. I'm gaming this Sunday with somebody from England. It's, is what it is. Great.
Yep, it's a fantastic world that we live in, at least in that regard. I am thankful that I've had the kind of opportunities that I've had to play with people from all over. It's been nice to kind of get the chance. It's more than with my home group, broaden my horizons by a wide margin. Has been really, really good for me, not just as a gamer in my level of experience as a gamer, but actually just for me as a person, for my soul to see that many people from different walks of life who think differently and act differently than I do and bring different things to the table. Finding what it is that they bring to the table that could also work for me, and taking away that lesson, if you will, and leaving behind and that not tainting the relationship that I'm building with that person. Have it be built upon those positive things that I can see worth in, and having that be the focus.
Gaming with more individuals, seeing different DM styles, seeing different play styles, it informs the kind of game that you want to be a part of. I know I've got this long gaming history, but that gaming history was basically with the same set of people, plus or minus, insert people here or there. And it was one of those things that most of that history didn't really inform. The earlier GMs didn't teach me anything more than what I don't want to do as a DM. Since I've started Nerdarchy and have played with, I don't want to say countless people, but a lot of people, I've learned quite a lot. And I've improved in the last 5-6 years by magnitudes over what I had already done. We met somebody who sadly is no longer affiliated with Nerdarchy. Some things happened. There's now bad blood. It is what it is. But he was running a game, and we would travel over into the city, over into Philadelphia, to be in a monthly game. I got to meet a whole new cast of characters and sit down and play. And we were in a gaming shop, so we had a 4-hour time slot. And up until this point in time, as a GM, I was very combat driven. I ran 2 to 3 encounters per session, a little bit of role playing, very little in the way of exploration. Traps are a weakness of mine. I don't usually plan them. I don't usually do a lot of stuff. If a thought comes to me to do something, it just kind of happens. Whatever. But when I got into the session the one time, the GM put this scenario in front of us. And, all these characters began really getting into this heavy role-playing session. And like I said, we were down to 4-hour time block, and he's a GM that he tells a story, and you don't go over a number of sessions. Like, he's like 5, 7, 9, what have you. He has a narrative story that he's telling, and you have to get through it. He's not going to add an extra just because. Well, we got down to 3 minutes, 3 hours and 40 minutes into the session, and he begins to realize, holy crap, we haven't had a combat. We have been just talking in character for 3.5 hours. And he's like, how do I end this conversation and shoehorn in the combat? So we get down to the last 10 minutes, and he's got, he rolls out the mat, he puts the people down. We do a 1.5 rounds of combat, take out the villain, and end the session. And he's like, oh, man, what the hell? And I sat back, and, it's not a huge drive, home. But the whole way home, I'm like, we had 9 minutes of combat, a 1.5 rounds of combat. This was unheard of for me. And that changed right then and there. Like, I will remember that moment for all of my gaming history, because it changed the entire concept of what this game was to me, and that we can just come in and put the dice aside and just talk in character, go through goals, go through whatever is there, build these emotions, build these stories, build it all out. And, oh, yeah, well, we have dice over here. We need them. And, I mean, this was clearly, well before I joined the Dawnbringers. This is, a number of years ago. But it changed, and it greatly changed, what I do with this game and how I am when I sit behind that GM screen.
I think the ability to do that, to absorb the things that you think work and develop your own personal style based on what you see other people doing that you like, and not doing the things that you see other people that you don't like, the things that they're doing. Finding your own style it's imperative to what we do. And I think there are different ways to run a game, and all of them are valid as long as your group is having consensual and wanting to be there, and okay with what's going on, then you're not doing it wrong.
And I will throw that in there. You as the DM have to be counted in that number of players. You cannot be forced into the chair and run a game that you do not enjoy doing. That is not fair to you. And I've met players, and the DM is a player who, like, yeah, I got to run another dungeon crawl tonight. I really wish we could just role play. And I've had players leave the game because they prefer a more combat heavy game. I've had players sit at the table where I've got one group of players who are like seriously engrossed in the heavy RP of the night, and I've got 2 players sitting there like this, basically asleep because they don't roleplay, they don't care. And I'm like, what do I do? So I do the best I can, but when you build a group, you try to find people that are all going to work well together. One of those players, they've built up themselves to do more role playing and become more a part of the story that I'm telling, and I'm very happy to see the player evolve that way. They're always welcome at my table, but they also know this is the style I run now. If you get 3 combats in a night, it's unprecedented these days. 1 to 2, and I'm usually happy. Every once in a while, I will throw a curve, mainly to appease those players who do care for that, and 2 to keep the players second guessing what I'm going to do. Be like, oh, dungeon crawl. what? Where's the role playing? Nope, dungeon crawl. And those kind of things can be fun. But for the most part, that's not what I do anymore. That's not my style. Um, but as a DM, you have to enjoy what you're doing because you put in so much more work than the players. And if you're going to just sit back and be like, yeah, not really happy with this, I'm doing it just to, make them happy. If there's no reciprocation, you're working to work, man, and that's no good.
Not only that, you are the pace car. Everybody else cues off of you. If your energy sucks, your table's energy is going to suck. You have to come at it hard, and in order to do that, you have to have a big buy-in. And in order to have a big buy-in, if you're not really good at faking it, if you're not a good bullshit artist, then you got to make sure that you're doing what you're passionate about.
And that is one reason why I prefer to run in person, because I can push the chair back and stand. And that, when I get into, standing GMing, like, okay, I've got my hands, I can use the energy of, I'm not Italian, but I do talk with my hands, as you've probably already seen. I'm upright. I've got, everything aligned, and I can project more, and I can talk, and I can do, and I can get into character so much better than if I'm just kind of like slouching in my chair. Okay, guys, in this next room, the dungeon walls are wet and slick, and there's mold that's growing, and you're going to put people to sleep with your descriptions if you're not really feeling the energy. So being able to, if you're able, because, DMing can be done by all types, but for me, especially if I want to increase the energy at the table, I will push the chair back. I will stand up. I've gotten into costume at the table. I've dressed the part as the DM. It's I'll do what I can to add more to the show of whatever the session is.
Positively. I've had to learn to get very, very good at acting in the box. It's definitely not my nature, but playing online for about 5 years now, it has become something that I am comfortable doing, thankfully. But running games in person is definitely a whole different vibe. For one, we play with miniatures and terrain, so that changes everything as it is.
Yeah. And I mean, I know people that game in person that prefer theater of the mind still, but that's not me, and less me. Since we had this isolation thing happen, I've been like, oh, I can't go anywhere. Back to crafting, and I've been working on a whole bunch of stuff. Some stuff for me, some stuff actually for you, since you happen to make this really sweet anvil, which if you haven't checked out the video, you definitely want to do so, because that's it's pretty sweet. And unfortunately, the video doesn't do it justice as holding it in person. Not only because it is cool, but not only because I have it here, but it's actually better in person than it is on the picture. The patina is cool, and he's even got a cool message along the bottom that he didn't share in the video, so I won't share it here. But it was a message to me in his Dwarven script, which I'm totally enamored with, and I absolutely love it. So I will say, here live with you, thank you very much, dude. This is awesome.
Got to you safely and undamaged.
But you can see here all 360 degrees. There is no damage. There is a cool message.
That's right.
On the bottom. This is in pristine and perfect condition, including the cool little note with the translation, because as much as Thorgarn can read Dwarven script, Ted certainly does not. He fails at multiple languages.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier.
he barely speaks English.
It can be a challenge. But no, man, I'm super to make it. I was really, really pleased with how it turned out. It's probably one of my favorite pieces that I've ever made, and being able to make it meaningful to you in character as well as kind of in person, it's just icing on the cake for me. So,
well, it absolutely is fantastic. My jaw dropped when I opened it up, My kids and my kids and my wife, were ogling it for a little while and showing it off. So it was definitely cool. And then immediately after I talked to you and said thank you and whatever else, you're like, oh, the video's now live. So I had to go and watch it and see, how it was you did. And I can definitely see all the little tooling marks that you did to look like it's a legit freaking anvil. So that was definitely fantastic.
Good, man. I appreciate that very much. Yeah, that's like only the 4th crafting video I think that I've put out, but I do have another one planned. Hopefully I will get to that soon. But the majority of what I do here is what you have this email video. Like I said, this is episode 22 that I have had with some just fantastic people from in and around the community, large and small, quote unquote. People of all kinds of different walks of life, like I was talking about earlier, but each one of them typically is somebody that I've had a connection with on some level. And it's kind of a way to get to know that person a little bit better, even outside of gaming, which is what I largely do here on the channel. Most of the videos that I have are live plays. Live plays stick around. There's plenty of content. However, they can be daunting because most of them are, 2.5 up to like 4.5 hours.
Well, we're almost at 2 hours now, so I mean,
that's very true. If you stuck around for this, you can watch a game. No, but yeah, if you like this kind of content, like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Definitely go check out Nerdarchy if you're not already checking it out. You can find the link to it down in the description of this video. In case for some reason you can't find it on your own, I made it easy for you.
If you search Nerdarchy, you will find us. Whether it be on YouTube, our website, if you search, social media, you'll find the ones that we're on. We have our own, subgroup in Facebook for the company of the NAG, which is, just an extra thing. We're on Discord, although we're not the community is active on Discord with Nerdarchy. Dave and I, not quite as much. There's just always so much to do lately with planning the convention, doing the out-of-the-box encounters. There's a lot of work that goes into, keeping Nerdarchy's lights running. Man,
I can only imagine. Like you said, this channel is one that I do completely on my own, and I've had to learn a lot, learn a lot of things over the last 5 years or so, and I still screw stuff up all the time.
Well, we've been doing this for a long time. We screw stuff up all the time. Can I plug one more thing?
Absolutely, please do.
All right. So you might have to search social media, but I think the promo code is Stay Nerdy. With all of the things going on right now, everybody is encouraging, get more gaming in, do things to, lift yourself up and be happy. And in response to that, we have been making products for quite a while. We've got digital products over on nerdarchy.com. And if you are interested in checking out, some of our Nerdarchy related products, you can do so. The promo code Stay Nerdy will actually take the 3 top, digital PDFs in your cart and reduce their price to 0. We've gotten, quite a lot of sales off of it. And we just want to encourage more people to go out there and game, and get a sampling of what our stuff is. There are some free products that are there, but the ones that we are normally charging for, we will actually reduce the price to 0. So it's not a pay what you want. It's literally, if you want to get 3 products for free, do it and see the kind of stuff that we do on a regular basis, and add those things. We got a lot of great stuff that's there. All ideas off of our own videos or, developed, off air, but great fun stuff. And like I said, free. Can't beat that.
No, it's very, very difficult to beat free. And thank you guys very much for making that decision to step up and be an even better part of the community than you guys already were.
Well,
it's amazing.
It's you have to do something. We understand that right now it's tough, and for those who are able to give something, I think you should. And that is something that it does not cost us to give away choice digital products. We are literally doing, giving away electrons. And it's going to, since it's, developed to be your choice, oh, you want to get the Ogre Magi, for the Feywild, great. There's a cool product that I love. I'm very fond of that character. Oh, you want to do something that's a little bit more futuristic and sci-fi? Great. The Planar Zoo is a lot of fun. Your player characters can literally be an exhibit at somebody's zoo, and you have to try and get out. A lot of fun stuff there as well. And that's just, two of the many different products, because we put out a new one just about every month. So, yeah, go check it out and get it for free.
That's fantastic, man. Truly. And I also wanted to thank you on to this series and doing this episode with me. It's been really, really great to kind of pick your brain and see what you had to say about mechanics and just kind of about gaming in general. Get the chance to talk to you outside of the opportunity that I have to actually get to play with you. So I appreciate it.
I'm more than happy to do so. More than happy to come back whenever you want to do this again. I don't know if you do repeat guests or not, but I'm, as the name implies, I'm a big nerd. I will talk gaming until I literally can't. So I don't know how long your other ones are. I've only seen a handful at this point in time, but I'm a talker, so I will talk your ear off and come back for more.
Oh, I know. I know, Ted. You and I have played together for about a year now.
About a year or more.
Yeah, but it doesn't bother me at all. I love talking shop. And yeah, man, like I haven't done a repeat guest as of yet, but I think I'm kind of running through most of the people that I already know that would be willing. So I imagine I'm going to start going back through and repeating guests probably sooner rather than later, if I had to guess.
Well, I mean, if you don't mind me throwing some suggestions out there, I mean, if you find out like, oh, well, I've got this topic here and this is the guest I had on there, that's their perspective, you could very well offer like, oh, well, is there somebody who has a different viewpoint, and say, well, I'm going to bring you on and I'm going to have part 2 and almost a long-weighted point counterpoint kind of scenario, and look at it from the other side. As you said, with the fudging rules, we kind of started off that conversation on different sides of the fence. We kind of met in the middle a little bit, but that's definitely different sides of the coin, with a variety of different topics, and it does wind up changing, what the conversation is, and it's like, oh, well, here's my side. And then, with a secondary video, you wind up having the ability to get into the meat and potatoes a little bit quicker, and then when you get into, the secondary questions, you get to dig deeper if you really want.
It's a very good point. That's certainly something that I will take under heavy advisement. I think that's a really good idea of how to recycle topics. If I also start, that's really a smart idea to double down on the content.
Almost like I've got a YouTube channel with thousands of different videos.
Almost. You may have done it once or twice. No, man. Thank you so much again for coming on. And for those of you who may have watched this evening, thank you very, very much for tuning in and staying with us. Thank you for anyone who may be tuning in the future and watching this. I appreciate that very, very much. For those of you who are live, if you're looking for content to watch next week, episode 3 of the Sunderhearth Project, where we are live improv building a setting together, me and my partner Steve, and we have a third person on rotating out as a guest, and we all have an equal say in what gets created in this brand new setting. It's been a lot of fun so far. And this coming episode will be a good friend of mine named Jeff Doty. He is going to be coming on to talk about magic in the world of Sunderhearth. So I'm looking really forward to tackling that on Monday night. On Wednesday, running episode something, one of the episodes, the next one, of the campaign that is in my homebrew world of Momentum, starring Jacob Norman and several other fantastic people. Lloyd Collins is no longer playing that game. He had to bow out, but Alan Holloway and Austin Anderson and Jeff Doty, and oh my God, I'm going to forget somebody here live on camera. If I forgot you, I am so sorry. And there's going to be a new player that is being introduced this next week, so I'm very excited to see that come to fruition. And then Thursday of next week, I will be getting the chance to run a Harbinger one-shot for the Dawnbringers crew. I'm very excited about that. I love Harbinger. That will take place in my homebrew cyberpunk 80s noir setting of Chrome City. Looking forward to diving into that. And I think that's it as far as the channel is concerned. For the immediate future, at least, may your dice roll high and your snacks always be within reach.